been wiped out.
Wiped out, yes.
So, which is a grave cause of concern for the people on the other side, and that is how they want to, keep sending people. That somebody who can, come back here and take over control, can strategize, can plan, can execute. So that is what the endeavors are there from the other side. But largely, when we look at the overall figures and the data and the statistics.
Good evening. The Prime Minister was in Uttarakhand today at Dev Bhumi, both in Kedarnath as well as in Badrinath. He inspected the progress of various development projects, including the Char Dham project. This is in keeping with other Hindu temples that the Prime Minister has visited in the recent past with much pomp and fare, whether it's Kashi Vishwanath, whether it's Ujjain Mahakal last week, and now today Kedarnath and Badrinath. Is Prime Minister Modi signalling a new normal in Indian politics, that it is okay, it is not considered politically incorrect anymore to wear your religion on your sleeve? But first, the story so far.
Nearly a year after his last visit to Kedarnath, the call of Baba Kedar brought Prime Minister Modi back to the temple. Donning a traditional Pahari outfit called Chola Dora, made by the women of Chamba in Himachal Pradesh, Prime Minister Modi performed a puja at Kedarnath temple. When he was gifted the outfit during a recent visit to Himachal, he had promised the women that he would wear it at the first instance during a visit to a cold region. He honoured the women by keeping his word. Prime Minister Modi also visited the Adi Guru Shankaracharya Samadhi Sthal in Kedarnath. He also interacted with Shramjeevis working on development projects and inquired if they were receiving benefits of government's welfare schemes. Accompanied by Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Pushkar Dhami, Prime Minister Modi then proceeded to Badrinath. He offered prayers at the famous Badrinath temple and reviewed the progress of development work of the riverfront in Badrinath. Striking a balance between Astha and Vikas, Prime Minister Modi laid the foundation stone for roadway and ropeway projects worth 3,400 crores for the Kedarnath and Badrinath temples.
Jai Badri Vishal.
And addressed a massive gathering at Manna village.
21वीं सदी के विकसित भारत के निर्माण के दो प्रमुख स्तंभ है। पहला, अपनी विरासत पर गर्व, और दूसरा, विकास के लिए हर संभव प्रयास।
From rebuilding Ram Janmabhoomi to renovating Kashi Vishwanath and the Mahakal temple in Ujjain, and now putting the spotlight on Kedarnath and Badrinath. Is Prime Minister Modi making a pitch for cultural restoration?
All right, so is this a pitch for cultural restoration, if you will, a spiritual rejuvenation of the Indian civilization? And there used to be a time in this country when all of these were considered politically incorrect. Is that time over? Let me now go across to our guest, Shaina NC, BJP spokesperson joining us. Advaita Kala is an author and political analyst. Kailash Adhikari, Director of Governance Now. And Suman C. Raman, political analyst, also joining us. Let me start with you, Shaina NC. Yes. The opposition is basically saying that, look, we are a secular democracy. At the end of the day, the Prime Minister is, of course, free to go wherever he wants. He's free to take part in whatever temple inauguration he wants. But at the same time, why does he shy away from, Muslims' iftar parties or other ceremonies and the ceremonies of other religions? This is the question that the opposition is asking.
So, Zaka, I'd like to start by saying that faith, belief is something which is very personal. Now, what you choose to do, whether it is even being a Baha'i or a Buddhist or a Jain or a Christian, is your personal space. I feel very proud that we have a Prime Minister that not only visits Kedarnath, Badrinath, but also visits Ujjain, also visits many other places across the length and breadth of this country, and somebody who is guided by a sense of spirituality. It shows you that leadership can coexist with a thought process which is with what is right and wrong. And what is wrong with him visiting Kedarnath, Badrinath? What is wrong with him visiting Ayodhya? If he has gone there for the development of the people who have gone for Char Dham as a pilgrimage, and we all know the kind of difficulties, and has announced a 1,267 crore ropeway, which only ensures that every citizen is also given that opportunity to go ahead with their faith and belief. I think it's a matter of pride. This is development coexisting with spirituality, and it shows you that the Prime Minister is genuinely the most hard-working Prime Minister we have ever seen in terms of what he packs into a day, what he envisages for this great country of ours, and what we as India should feel proud of when it comes to our leadership.
Okay, let me ask Advaita Kala. She comes from Devbhoomi. You are from Uttarakhand, Advaita. When you saw the pictures today of the Prime Minister at both Kedarnath and then subsequently at Badrinath, of course, there is the temporal factor, which is that, for religious pilgrims, for devotees who want to go there, this is making their life much easier. The infrastructure is building there. But that's just the temporal. What about the spiritual reawakening that the Prime Minister was talking about today? Do you believe that him, going to all these temples is also part of that project where, as he says, "Hamare virasat par garv"? Is that the attempt here?
I think we have to change our lens. I think it's more a question of our own lens. For so long, we have been spoon-fed, really, this propaganda that if you are a Hindu, so-called Hindu nationalist, like they like to use as some sort of slur in a lot of media reports, then, development and that don't go together. Now, rightly, as you pointed out, I am from Uttarakhand, so I was listening to his speech extremely carefully. And of course, there is the temporal aspect of it, and that has to do with his own faith and his own belief system. And he's entitled to that, just like the American president is entitled to his faith, and that's a democracy. So I think that's not the issue at all. And I don't even think that's an issue for the public. What he focused on was, even when he was speaking of these temples, he was speaking in terms of accessibility. Like, we don't think about this, but think, disabled people, it's so difficult for them to even access these shrines. He spoke about, no one's mentioning, he spoke about the Sikh Gurudwara, which again has an accessibility issue. So I think what he was doing was focusing on Uttarakhand, what Uttarakhand has to offer, which is in a large part, undeniably, religious tourism. And he focused on that, and I think without apology. So it's really our lens where we have such a problem, where we can't appreciate the fact that there will be a Char Dham Yatra. He spoke about Mana village. He addressed Mana village, which is the last village on the border. He spoke about the last village in Gujarat, right next to the Pakistan border, and how that has come alive. Uttarakhand has an issue with ghost villages, what we call dead villages which have been completely abandoned. He spoke about infusing life into them with development. So, there was so much in his speech when it came to development. And of course, this temporal spiritual aspect, because that is what our state has to offer. And he married those two together beautifully. And I think it was an extremely powerful intervention, because if I look at it from the political analysis side, this election was a hard win for the BJP. There was a lot of anti-incumbency sentiment. And the Prime Minister really swung it for the BJP in Uttarakhand. And this was his first visit post that. So there was also an expression of gratitude during his speech. So I think, this direct connect that he has, and the fact that he spoke about the Parvat Mala, significant again, Zaka. It's so difficult. Life in the hills are so difficult. And I was so impressed that so many of the audience were women, because women of the hills lead the hardest life. And to hear the man with the top job saying, there will be a Parvat Mala, there will be roads, basic things. There's 75 years later, we're still struggling for that in some parts of our state. So I think it was just a brilliant intervention, and him being at temples, that's his personal faith, but that's also what Uttarakhand has to offer, not only to the country, but to the world.
Let me ask Sumansi Raman, and I say this without any, malice or anything, but there used to be a time in this country where it was not considered politically correct for politicians to visit temples, or at least display their faith so openly, wear it on the sleeve. as Prime Minister Modi has done, whether it was with Kashi Vishwanath, Ujjain Mahakal last week, or today at Kedarnath and Badrinath. But it was not politically incorrect for politicians to go to iftar parties. Now you have the opposite. You have a politician who, wears his faith on his sleeve, goes to all these temples, and has not taken part in an iftar party, at least in the 8 years that he's been Prime Minister. Is this the new normal? And should we accept this as the new normal? If it was okay back then, why shouldn't it be okay now?
Zaka, let me first of all take you up on that statement that you made, that people earlier were, hesitant to go to temples. Almost every single Prime Minister has been to all these major shrines that you're talking about, including Mrs. Indira Gandhi has been there, Rajiv Gandhi has been there, as well as, of course, we all know about the likes of P.V. Narasimha Rao and so many others. Mr. Devegowda has been, to most of these religious shrines. So I don't know where this story comes from that they were very hesitant to visit temples. They, in fact, even participated in renovation of temples. Rajiv Gandhi inaugurated the Gokarna shrine in near Mangalore in Karnataka in 1991.
No, so as we...
Offending minorities is completely... I mean, I don't know where you're getting the evidence for it from. I have never seen this happen before. Maybe they did not make each of these visits a huge national event. For instance, the visits to Tirupati, I can show you the photographs if you like, starting from Jawaharlal Nehru. Would you like to see them? I mean, a Google search will...
No. So, Sumant, as we try and see if we can fix your audio, the issue is not that they were not going to these places. Of course, they may have gone to those places. But the issue was it seemed to be wrapped in a certain degree of secrecy. It seemed to be wrapped in a certain degree of, for want of a better phrase, political correctness. Has that changed is the question I'm asking. All right, we've lost Sumant. Let Kailash Adhikari answer that question. Kailash.
So, Zaka, firstly, I believe that I completely believe in what the Honorable Prime Minister has said, that in order to march ahead, two things are most important. First, you have to value your cultural heritage, and you should be proud of it. And as you mentioned in your beginning address, that wearing your religion or your faith, religion or faith up your own sleeve should not be seen as a taboo or should not be seen as wrong. One should be proud of their own religion and their faith. And it stops no one, not even the Prime Minister, from expressing what his faith is, A. And B, if you look at the development aspect of it, the Vikas aspect of it, I have been to Ujjain Mahakal temple many a times, but now when I go, Zaka, in terms of infrastructure development, it's a sea of change there. I mean, the kind of infrastructure, the kind of simplicity with which each and every devotee who comes there can do the darshan and come out, and the kind of facilities that are given there is most important. And what Advaita ma'am also spoke about, that in the hills, there was a point of time where even going to Badrinath or Kedarnath for many people, it was difficult. You see the kind of roads, infrastructure. Now there's ropeway, now there's helicopter service. So in order to boost the development there also, such initiatives are very much needed, and that helps the entire community. I mean, it creates employment, it develops an entire, even a tourism model there. So having faith in your own and respecting your own religion as well as cultural heritage and development are the two most important factors which the Honorable Prime Minister has laid out.
If we have Sumant back on the conversation, Sumant, the issue is not so much that previous Prime Ministers never used to go to temples, but the issue was whenever they did, there was either, an element of secrecy around it for whatever reasons best known to them, or there was a, like I said, for want of a better phrase, a certain degree of political correctness about it. Has that inhibition been shed? That's the question I'm asking.
Zaka, I think you are referring to the fact that they perhaps did not make it a national live telecast event. If that is what you're referring to, I mean, I don't think it's actually necessary to make every visit to a temple a national event and to have it shown live on national TV.
What's
so
the problem
I don't
with that?
know. I mean, there are photographs of Zaka. Have you seen the photographs? There are photographs of prime ministers visiting virtually every temple. You take Mahakal. The number of prime ministers who visited the Mahakal temple is on record. Where have they hidden these visits? Where is this entire story coming from? People were very hesitant. prime ministers were scared of going to temples. I mean, where is this? What is the basis for this? I mean,
No,
I
but
really want to challenge
the
you on
latter
this.
part of my question, which was that, you know, it was okay and it was kosher for politicians at one point of time to go to iftar parties. But today you have a prime minister who, from whatever I can remember, yes, he did go to a mosque, I think in Dubai or Abu Dhabi when in one of his visits abroad. He had gone to a mosque also in Indonesia, if I'm not mistaken. But he has not gone to an iftar party here in India. And that's fine. I mean, that seems to be politically okay in this day and age.
One question, Zaka.
Yeah.
One question, Zaka. I am delighted that the Prime Minister has improved the infrastructure at all these Hindu temples and holy shrines. There is no two opinions on that. My problem is when he does this, and essentially we are a secular country, once in a while, I don't say that for every temple he has to choose another a church or a mosque or a historic place of another faith and renovate it. But once in a while, you need to be seen. That symbolism is extremely important to say that, look, everyone should celebrate the renovation of the temples, not just Hindus. It's part of our culture. And to make that happen, the Prime Minister must be seen occasionally at least at events of other faiths.
Okay, let me ask both Shaina and Advaita to respond to that.
It's not a cultural
that
thing, it's a
at least
political
occasionally he should be seen at a mosque renovation or a church renovation. That's when it gives out the message that it is sabka saath, sabka vikas. Shaina.
So the Prime Minister, I think, leads by example. You talk about Kashi, you talk about Ujjain, and then you counter question and say, why didn't he visit a temple or a mosque or a gurdwara? Who's to say he hasn't? And everybody who chooses to judge with jaundiced eyes, I would only want to say, this is not just about visiting a temple. This is about better infrastructure. And as Advaita said, and I'm glad she said it and I didn't, living as somebody who comes from
churches need better infrastructure?
She will tell you the challenges. Why not? Yes,
don't mosques need better infrastructure?
Why?
Why should
how many?
One at a time, please. I think it'll benefit all of us, most importantly our viewers. Let Shaina finish. Let Shaina finish. Thank you.
Zaka, you asked me a question.
Sure.
Not fair. I'm not jumping in.
Sure. Shaina finish.
Sumanji chooses to view everything with his jaundiced eyes. That can be his perspective. And who's to sit here and disagree? I am only speaking as a citizen of this country. My Prime Minister, it gives me pride when he is talking about better infrastructure and better, opportunities for people who are living in the hills and for citizens alike. I am very proud that my Prime Minister is going and ensuring that not only is communication and infrastructure better, but also opportunities of tourism and spiritual tourism. Do understand, when we talk about spiritual tourism, it doesn't just happen like that. You have to create the whole infrastructure. Rather than viewing this as a development issue or a development, agenda, you are only trying to view what his personal belief is.
Okay, so Advaita also wanted to respond. I mean, why should this be seen as a faith issue? This is more a Vikas issue.
And why should he be apologetic?
Okay, sure.
Why should he be apologetic?
Sure, fair enough.
And faith
let Advaita respond.
Why should any Indian be apologetic?
Zaka, here's the elephant in the room. Temple money goes to governments. We don't control our temple trusts. So there's a big distinction then between the Hindu places of worship and those belonging to other faiths, because they do have control, monetary control over their places of faith. And then they have a system of donations and management of those funds and what they choose to do with it. They have those rights.
No, but what has that got to do, Advaita? What has that got to do with where the Prime Minister chooses to go or not go?
But I mean, if you're going to nitpick over the fact that why is he at a temple and why was, Kedarnath, there's also a question of antiquity. Kedarnath, there was also a question of 2013 and the flash floods. This sort of resentment every time this is done, and then looking at it from that very, very narrow lens of, religion and what this means and what is the messaging and what is the signaling. I
How
think
do
you
you
have to
know?
really move
Okay.
beyond that. I mean, we saw him do this in the first year
So-
when he went to Kashi Vishwanath.
So,
that
Suman,
time around, he won as
you know,
a member of
one of the
parliament and
arguments
everything
that
cannot
Advaita
about
has put
that.
forth is in most states across the country, Hindu temples are controlled by the charitable endowments department. It comes under the state gets the money of many of these temples. So why shouldn't the Prime Minister be going to these temples, including in Uttarakhand, by the way, where there is a temple welfare board? Yeah.
No, first of all, if we are looking at it from the infrastructure development perspective, there is no problem at all.
Okay.
Invariably, these visits are with the Prime Minister offering worship in the temple, and the hymns and the Vedic rituals which are associated with the visit. So how does Advaita say that, why are you looking at it from a religious perspective? What other perspective to look at it in? Look, my point
she
is
go to a
not about
temple.
this. Look, 1 minute, I didn't interrupt. 1 minute. My point is very simple. If infrastructure or tourism needs to be developed around holy sites, I'm all for it. But there are so many Christian sites which are historical places in the country. Some of their infrastructure could be developed as well. Look, it's not that I'm doing a comparison of the number of temples versus number of mosques versus number of churches. Not at
You
all.
are, sir.
I'm saying
You're
once
only
in a
saying why
while,
he hasn't
once in a
gone to a
while,
mosque.
at least, no, Zaka, my point is, Sabka Saath. There are 20% of non-Hindus who live in this country. Should there not be an attempt to reach out to them as well? What is the harm? And after all, let's look at it. These are not personal visits. Personal visits will not be live telecast on national channels time
Why
after
not?
time after time from multiple camera angles.
Can I just
Look,
have a...
this is not.
Because
Okay.
Zaka,
There is no.
So
Zaka,
let
we
both
have-
both
Do you know-
Shaina and
do you know
Advaita
the
respond to
number
that.
of times-
The
do you know
point
the
that
number of
critics
times
like Sumant
previous
Raman
prime
are
ministers
making
have visited?
is that this has been made into a national event. This is now more a spectacle rather than some kind of spiritual / civilizational rejuvenation. Shaina first and then Advaita. Yeah.
I think Sir has an opinion on everything and he has an issue with everything. There are few people who are a microscopic minority who choose not to want the Prime Minister to communicate. There is a multifold new generation that wants to know where the Prime Minister is and what he's doing. Wants to know when we say Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Prayas, what it actually means. And if you have a Prime Minister who visits a state of Uttarakhand,
Previous prime ministers didn't do that.
is 1 minute. Oh, they chose not to communicate or they weren't good communicators. That's their problem. Don't please
Vajpayee
attribute
ji.
this to
Are
our
you
Prime
referring to
Minister.
Vajpayee ji?
Our Prime Minister has won the hearts of crores of Indians and crores of Hindus who want to know what is going to happen at the Char Dham. What is the infrastructure projects at Kedarnath, Badrinath? What is the ropeway going to be like? How
No,
is
but
the
Shaina,
timeline? What
no,
is the
Shaina, one point,
opportunity? This
one
is
point.
all
No,
about
one second. Give me
communication.
10 seconds. Shaina, it's not
Zaka,
just
this is a
about the
new
infrastructure
generation.
development. Let's face it. Infrastructure
This is a
development
new
is one part of it.
generation.
If it's just about the infrastructure development, then the BRO chief would go there, or the NHAI chief would go there, or any of the people involved in the infrastructure projects, they would go there, or the chief minister would go there. The fact that the Prime Minister goes there, and as Sumant says, this is elaborate. He takes part in the rituals. There is visible
not?
sort of symbolism. No, I'm not faulting it.
Give me a
I'm
reason
not
why
saying
not?
I'm not saying he's at fault. All I'm
Should he
asking
be
is
apologetic about his
all
own
I'm
belief?
asking is
Or should we feel proud that
can
we
you
have a
just
Prime Minister
confine
who's a
it? Can you
doer
just confine
and
it to
is
just infrastructure
spiritual?
development? That's the only question.
No, I don't think he needs to be apologetic about anything. Why not? He's the tallest leader of this country. People
Yes.
look up to him, revere, and this is his spiritual process as well, which is coexisting with the development of the country.
You're
You
not
fault
answering
him
the
for
question.
every move. You fault him if he communicates. You fault him if he doesn't
Advaita,
communicate.
and
You
then,
fault him if he goes.
and then
You
Kailash
fault
is
him
also
for
waiting. Yeah,
everything.
Advaita.
Sir,
Yeah.
you are doing
You know,
just
Zaka-
the same.
Zaka,
So
I'm very open to going to other places of worship. If I use an example of UP, for example, Begum Samru and her church, because she converted in Sardana, is hugely regarded as wish fulfilling and very, very revered. I've been there, and the same year I happened to go to Kashi Vishwanath as well, which is about 15 years ago. But the disparity in the maintenance levels, and this is something that the Prime Minister also pointed out. He said that there has been this inhibition to renovate, to to make these places of worship accessible and even just clean. Even, Kashi Vishwanath Ji Mandir, I mean, you don't mind because you're a devotee, but when you walk, right from the main street to the actual, main sanctorium, your feet used to be drenched with sewer water and water from everywhere. So these are very practical reasons as well. These buildings, like Begum Samru's church, is about 150 years old at most. These are about 800 plus year old buildings. So it was very important to also bring them up to speed so that they can facilitate the kind of pilgrimages that they need to in this time and age.
On that part, there is no dispute. On that part, there is no dispute at all. I think the dispute that Sumant is asking is twofold. One, should the Prime Minister, as the, for want of, again, a better phrase, the first citizen, although the President is the first citizen in our constitutional democracy, but he is the premier leader of this country. A, should he be going to, destinations of other faiths? And B, more importantly, it's not just about the infrastructure development. There's also this spiritual exercise. There is also this, as he said, hamare virasat pe garv lena. That is also an attempt when he goes to Jain Mahakal, or when he goes to Ayodhya, or when he goes to Kedarnath and Badrinath.
I think there is, of course, there's an aspect of that, and that he's spoken of extensively, which is the decolonizing of the mind. Remember, we went through years of slavery wherein we were the unwashed masses. Our religion was dirty. We were superstitious. We were unclean. We were not scientific. So that can have an impact on the psyche of a people, and that is really the psyche that he's trying to address. He's not trying to create divisions. He's saying, look, this has been our lived experience for so many generations. 75 years on, we've broken away from those shackles of a colonial past. And one way of reclaiming that is by just saying, yes, this is who I am. And if we have to take the lead in the future, we're already the fifth largest economy in the world. By 2028, their estimates will be the third largest economy of the world. But if we don't know where we're coming from, we're certainly not going to get there.
Kailash,
so I think that's where he's coming from.
Part of what the Prime Minister is attempting to do is to break the shackles of the colonial mindset. Yes, we've been, free from the British and free from colonial rule for the last 75 years. But in our minds, we're still shackled by what the British did to us. So is the attempt by the Prime Minister also to break those mental shackles, as Advaita says?
Absolutely. It's just, it is not just about the physical independence that you get. It's also about the mental independence, Zaka. And what the Honorable Prime Minister is trying to do is also to break our mental shackles. And at the 75th year of our independence, at the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. And also, second, a very important point, Zaka, which I believe that how is that some people believe that by visiting a mosque or by visiting a church or by visiting places of a different faith, only you can signify Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas is about a comprehensive overall socio-economic development of the entire society, which is happening since the past 8 years. Just by visiting a place of other faith, how one should take that only as a symbol of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas is what I fail to understand, Zaka.
Okay, I'll give Sumant the final word. Sumant, again, it comes back to one simple contention, not just the temple visits, that's just one part of it. The emphasis on learning of Hindi. Yesterday, the Prime Minister, when he spoke in Gujarat at the National Education Program event, he said, English is actually, whether we like it or not, it's actually furthering a slavish mindset. So all of this is about A, breaking those colonial shackles, and B, more importantly, taking pride in who we are and where we have come from.
This entire breaking of colonial shackles is pretty much humble. I think that there is no argument at all that we need to develop a scientific bent of mind. The scientific bent of mind was given to us, whether we like it or not, during the years of British rule, and subsequently by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who started the IITs and all these, the Indian Institute of Science and all the institutes of excellence to focus on science. And I'm thankful that Advaita has acknowledged that we should be, moving away from the colonial shackles and thinking scientifically. That is actually a contradiction in terms, which you didn't realize. But never mind, it is still the fact that a scientific bent of mind is what this country needs. Certainly we are spiritual people. Certainly we are people of faith. and the two of them can coexist very well
Okay.
as they have done through centuries
As
in
you
this
should
country.
realize.
And
My-
they're
my
existing
simple
in the
point,
Prime
Jaka,
Minister's
Okay,
behavior.
I am completely out of
Mr.
time.
Kailash
Sumant
said,
Raman,
As
Advaita
you should
Kala,
realize,
Shaina NC, and Kailash Adhikari. Thank you very much for joining us. Completely out of time here on the show. That's a wrap. Thanks very much for tuning in.
Good evening. Thanks a lot for staying with us here at CNN News 18. You're watching the biggest exclusive tonight with me, Ridhima Bhatnagar. Liz Truss has stepped down as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom in a span of just 45 days. While stepping down, she said that she no longer can serve the mandate she was initially sworn in for. Speaking